Yeah, that's kind of like a huge area. The culture at the beginning was very much that whole hippie thing, which was, you know, the cliches, sex and drugs and rock and roll. So there's a lot of smoking dope and talking big dreams, and then kind of trying to do them on varying scales. In terms of how we lived together or apart, we had a main house, an old farmhouse, which was the community house. People had caravans, house trucks, tents. I slept in an army tent for the first 3 years up there till I built my house. Some people, built little shacks, and so we all ate together, bathed together. All our needs were taken care of in the community house, but then we all had our own separate spaces. Some people were really promiscuous, some people were really, it was like any other slice of society, except that it's all young people, and it's pretty exciting in your 20s like that. And then of course once people have children, they start waking up, and that was when people had their own separate households much more, so they tended to stay home in the evening with their kids rather than hang out together. And that's this whole thing of decentralisation that I think happens in most communities over time. You have a family, so you want to create a family life, so the dynamics of the community spreads apart. When people move into their own spaces, the dynamics of the community changes utterly, because in the beginning every evening we would all have dinner together. We'd usually have lunch together too, and in the process of coming together every day you just chat and you overhear things and you know what's going on, and you know who's having a squabble about something, and you know who's really pissed off because somebody did such and such. Everybody's got their little ears going when you're together a lot, and you need to be together every day for that if you want to work in that way. If you don't want to work in a formal way where you have work meetings and finance meetings and whatever else, committees for things, if you're trying to operate in that way, everybody has to make sure everybody else knows what's going on. The best way to do that is to eat together. So once everybody's in their own space, suddenly you find out that something's happened that you had no idea about, and it absolutely affects you because you happen to be the one. Like, I would be an example. I looked after the animals. I had cows and sheep. They weren't my cows and sheep, they were the community cows and sheep. However, they were mine insofar as I was the boss of them, and you have to be. If you're looking after animals, you have to be the boss of them. And I installed a fence, a water tap on an area of land that had no water in it because I was strip grazing it. And I went out one day because the cows were yelling, and the tap wasn't there. The tap was gone and they had no water. And it took me probably half a day to figure out why the tap had gone and who'd taken it off and all that sort of thing. Now, if you're not communicating with the person who figured the tap didn't need to be there, then those become major issues. Well, as I said in the beginning, it was all in together. In fact, at Tahuna Farm, we even shared, the pouch of tobacco on the shelf was collective, and everything was shared. At first, at Renaissance, yes, all food was produced together and bought. Extra things were bought, so you were completely taken care of in that way, though you were always responsible for creating your own shelter and all your own personal needs. But over time, the whole thing of welfare made an enormous impact on that place, because before welfare, if we didn't get our shit together, we didn't eat. Welfare meant people could go to the supermarket and buy food, and once they started collecting the dole, plastic bags started appearing and bought food, and that was a very slow and gradual process until these days the people who live there are not interested. They're not interested in community. They're not interested in organic farming. Some of them are. But the borderliners, as I called them in my talk, the people in the black with the dogs and the dead cars who ended up living there, they are there because it's a cool, cheap hangout in the country, man. Not because they want to live in community. It's absolutely nothing to do with it. But over the years, they've kind of come to realise that they are the community, because all the people that were the community that they were on the periphery of left. And so some of them have come to realise that they do want to have community, and they have a little collective garden for vegetables and fruit. Periodically they milk a cow, but that's kind of quite demanding because you have to milk it every day and you can't just go, oh, I can't be bothered today. So in and out they have milk and butter. A few people have a few chickens, but most people go to town every week on Dole Day, buy their supplies, food, wine, beer, and live on that. Then they put the little bit of money into the farm fund, it's called, which is the community account, and that money pays expenses. I mean, for example, the fire department has hassled them about not having a big reservoir of water for fighting fires, so they've had to shell out a few thousand for big water tanks recently, and that's come out of that farm fund. But, you know, the focus shouldn't only be on them, because other people come in, like a couple came in a house truck with a couple of children, fantastic people. So they see the potential at Renaissance. It's a very beautiful place. And of course, after 30 years, it's got mature orchards and woodlots, and, you know, it's pretty amazing. And they stay for a while, get together in small groups, do some collective stuff. I don't know if in Israel you've got these kind of feral eco-warrior types. They turn up at Renaissance too, and they go, yeah, we're going to clean this place up, and yeah, man. Well, they're not very effective either. I mean, they're good on a small scale. They'll get in there and clean up the old man's beard, which is a terrible noxious weed we've got that smothers things, and they're really cool. They're not, and they're into peace and love and tree hugging, but you know, tree hugging is not enough, really. They don't seem to have the skills to go, okay, let's really be effective as a group and make this thing work.